Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Grid. I'm your host Swarup Karyath, and today I have Lauren. Lauren is the global America's power and utilities leader for Microsoft, and he's been in the role for a while now. We're going to have a lot of good conversations about AI, power, utilities, the intersection of data, and what Microsoft is doing with other partners around this critical piece of technology. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Hi, Swarup. Thanks for having me.
What originally drew you into the space? What was your start into the energy and utility space, and how did you find your calling here?
I initially started my career with PwC in the UK. Again, across industries, find myself focusing on energy customers because I was always aware that it's such a critical area for the future. Geopolitics, sustainability, energy independence, affordability, like all these are really key topics, and they were about 20 years ago, but they still are even more. So, I found it fascinating to figure out, like from that standpoint, what energy is, how do we access it, and what the energy companies are doing. So, yeah, and maybe to give some sense of how Microsoft plays in that space, and specifically in power and utility, I see kind of three buckets. So Microsoft is a big, stable customer of the grid. We have large stable loads with the grid. And so we're a strong customer. We also sell a lot to grid companies, all our products and services. But more importantly, we play a big role in partnership, and we play a big role in partnership in kind of two ways. So one way of thinking of us as a partner to the industry is around bringing together an ecosystem from yourself at IBM on the consulting and technology side to small software vendors to kind of niche consulting firms. We bring all those folks together and innovate with our customers within the ecosystem. And then the other aspect as well on partnership is on policy. Microsoft does a lot on policy for sustainability, from getting our data centers to be carbon neutral or water neutral, all the way to driving policy agendas on decarbonization. So yeah, that's the way I think about how we play in the in this industry.
There is massive data center growth that Microsoft is planning, along with other players. Are you involved in some of those decisions, or are you more in terms of enabling technology to be able to run data centers more efficiently?
No. So I'm on the enablement side. I work with power utilities. I'm not the one with the checkbook either for buying from the grid or for installing data centers. What I would say is that the growth in need for clean energy, for electricity, has several sources. So one part of it is population growth in some
Yes.
countries. Then part of it is electrification of usage, EVs,
Yeah.
heating, HVAC, all that. And then a big part of it is data centers. But a big part of the data center story is, taking pictures and videos of the kids. It's not only about AI. So AI is a big
Sure.
story of, the demand growth from AI is part of the data center story, and the data center story is part of the overall usage growth story. So just to put that into perspective.
Yeah. That's a fair comment.
Yeah.
Was there a particular initiative in your career that, and after that, you thought, this is the moment, this is when I found my calling, and I think your perspective changed and you got fully on with the industry, or was it a series of moments like that?
And I guess right after I started working within the grid, again as a consultant, I just realized what energy was. And so I'll share a few things that are obvious to people in the field, but realizing that almost all the energy we use today is solar energy. That realization was, and what I mean by that, by the way, is that the wind comes from different temperature on the surface of the globe. So the
Yeah.
wind is actually powered. Oil is solar powered. Oil was the hydrocarbon chains were formed in the leaves a long time ago by solar energy. The fact that we have dams with water flowing down is because water is evaporated by the sun, etc. So I just realized that I found that absolutely fascinating. The fact that you couldn't make energy, you could just store it in a different way. And then at the same time, I also found fascinating the idea of that the world may be running out of energy. When you take a schematic view of the globe, the layer we inhabit, the layer we drill, is much thinner at scale than the skin of an orange, right?
Yeah.
It's not, and the inside
Yeah.
of the orange, in our case, is a big bowl of molten lava.
That's correct.
It's just fascinating to think about, what the limits are in that context, and what is the role for technology? What are the limits of technology? Because you don't want to fall into techno solutionism either.
Yeah.
But I just found this whole area absolutely fascinating, and hence I'm still here.
Yeah. So between your journey as a chartered accountant and your journey as an energy enthusiast, like was there a period in between where you were dabbling with other things?
Well, first of all, those are really linked if you think about it. A lot of the conversations we have around carbon reporting are basically
Hmm.
strictly speaking accounting conversations. If you try to think about, well, let's take a very concrete example. I won't mention who I worked with on that, but I did the carbon reporting for a customer in my previous life, and I got pushed back from somebody on the C-suite who didn't understand or refused to understand why a first class plane ticket would carry a bigger footprint than an economy passenger, and that came from an accountant. That's clearly an accounting question. That's how you allocate a specific cost to anything, right? And clearly, if you take more of a plane to yourself, and if your seat is heavier, and et cetera, then your share of the footprint of the plane has to be bigger. It's pretty obvious. But there's a lot of accounting mindsets examples like that in carbon accounting. That's part of the answer. But also, yes, I in between my experience at Microsoft and in consulting, I had my own company as well. I built an online learning platform in Europe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so that's the transmission aspect, the transmission from the learning standpoint, not from a transmission distribution standpoint, but the transmission of knowledge is something that's really important to me, and I think it's extremely relevant in the energy sector as well. The energy sector has a bad rep, and nuclear has a bad rep. Others as well have a bad rep, and I think there's a really an exercise to do to explain what energy is, where it comes from, how it's transformed, the fact that it's never lost as well. So yeah, I'm involved with some of that as well. I can't talk about everything yet, but some open training will come out on these topics. So.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Let's talk about something that's happening really in the industry right now. And maybe we start with edge computing, IoT and edge computing. So there is obviously a lot of people are completely bought on the value of AI
Yeah.
in the cloud. But there is also a lot of operational value out in the edge, right? The substations, the AMI, all of that. Where are you seeing sort of that intelligence starting to shape how utilities operates today, or are you seeing that, or if is there still a ways to go before we get to that productivity there?
Yeah, no. I mean, we definitely see things in action already. It's not about promises; it's about reality in a lot of cases. But the utilities have a three hard things to juggle with, and there is the reliability aspect, the affordability, and the kind of sustainability. And I mean, this is quite hard to manage all together. But yeah, to answer your question specifically, we see a lot of the intelligence shifting from the cloud to the edge. So and kind of flowing both ways. So we with Azure and Fabric IQ and some of the Microsoft software and services, we're able to make sense of data that was just gathering dust, like virtual dust before. All the data flowing from the historians, for instance.
Yeah.
If you think about a continuous manufacturing process, now we're able to make sense of it for maintenance, for identifying any type of faults. But the other way around as well, we see a lot of computing happening at the edge. In the case of our partner Itron, for example, um, they have edge-enabled meters. So the grid edge now streams real-time data, including a customer DR output from beyond the transformer, and that flows directly into the control system. And they have a mesh network across their meters for low latency integration. They can they can allow the customers or the utilities in that case to detect outages or voltage anomaly and responds within seconds rather than hours in the past.
Power quality and things of that sort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's feeding into reliability. That's if you detect things before an actual fault happen, not only does it help with reliability, but it helps with affordability because you save on cost of having to send a workforce on the ground, and being more efficient with the grid also helps with the sustainability because you don't have to produce power that you're losing. So it's still a great story.
Yeah. So essentially, what Itron is doing is like from their systems, they use Azure IoT um, to get that data across to their decision making systems, such as ADMS. Is that what the architecture broadly looks like?
Yeah, so that's one that yes, but also you have some of the decisions made on chip in the meters. Yeah,
Okay. So the meters are able to make those decisions as
yeah, yeah.
well.
So
Okay.
it's actually smart meters, as in decision made on
It's
the
true.
meters.
True. True. Can you give an example of some of those decisions that the meters might be making?
But one of the big topics is to kind of find innovative ways to manage behind the meters resources. And some of what we're doing with our partners, Itron and others, enables the orchestration of EV chargers or rooftop solar systems without relying on customers' home internet connections. By the way, it all goes through the router. So that's
Gosh.
one. It all goes not to the router, but to the meter.
What for it to be widely adopted? Itron is introducing technology. There is other utilities starting to play with it, use it. For it to scale to become the standard and the only way utilities are doing it, what do you think is a gap? If there is a gap, is it more about just dollars and the will to adopt, or is it something else that's preventing a full scale adoption of that?
I think there are several issues that slow the adoption.
Mm-hmm.
There's a broader cultural issue within the industry. Is historically, I mean, in recent history, used to stasis more than increase in usage.
Yeah,
That creates a culture where you're very risk averse, which is fine. You have the culture in different industries, but that's definitely something that is an hindrance to innovation. Again, for good reasons, historically and culturally. I think also there is, in some cases, the perception that failure is not an option. And I say perception on purpose because I don't think failure is an option in banking. If you don't get your salary wired at the end of the month, it's not just, I'll have it next month. No, it's a big problem. I don't think failure is an option in healthcare. I don't think it's an option in agriculture, manufacturing. I don't think in education failure is an option. If you think about what that actually means long term, when you hear that, I'll push back and say, well, there's a lot of areas in utilities where you can fail without the whole chain failing, like without the whole
correct.
blackout.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So not all processes are on the critical path to blackout, but there is this perception. And from a regulatory standpoint, so again, the two main regulatory, I would think about the two main blockers would be NERC SIP compliance and the cloud capitalization. So on the NERC SIP compliance side, there is definitely a risk of over compliance because it's the easiest path to follow to just over comply
Over
with everything,
comply. Agreed.
being way beyond the regulation rather than actually understanding what is possible or not. And then there is a broader conversation around maybe there's a need to rejuvenate regulation to make sure that regulation is
You're
still
absolutely
relevant.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. And then on the cloud workloads, we get pushback as well around cloud capitalization because running things in the cloud or doing some of the innovative software things, you're not putting steel in the ground. You're not building hard assets, and you're not earning a rate of return on those assets. So that's another issue that slows down the utility, I would say.
You're right. You're right. And I think there's been some changes that's happened to the rules to allow for more capitalization from that
Yes,
perspective, right?
that's
So
true.
the
Yeah.
industry's regulations are responding to it, but I agree with you. It's not fast enough. And something like a NERC compliance, people tend to always side on on the side of caution, right? So you don't have to be adventurous. I want somebody else to do it first, not me. That's
Yeah.
generally the attitude, right? And a lot of utilities are contemplating that, but it's difficult from that perspective.
Yeah. And the other issue as well is AI in some cases can be seen as a black box. But in my experience, again, as one of the many things I did before was also getting a CISA certification and as an IT auditor at one point. And those systems are never black boxes. They need controls to be in place. You need to have segregation of duties. And if you look at the way we deploy AI on Azure, well, there's two things here. Like, first of all your role-based access control from Azure flow into
Yeah,
whatever you do with AI.
yeah, yeah,
AI is not this uh, little genie that runs on you in the cloud and kind of let you access anything you want to make any decisions you want. It's a lot more restricted than that. And you are in control of those limits. And then the other thing I would say as well is that Microsoft has very clear responsible AI principles, things like transparency, where not only do we not train models on customer data, but we public models on customer data. The customers can train the models obviously on their own customer data. But yeah, we try to ensure that everything we do with AI is done responsibly, and we make sure that there's a lot of research happening to make sure that even Gen AI is explainable. So whatever answer you get, you're able to understand why you got that answer in order to question potential biases and other issues of that nature.
makes sense. Makes sense. On that topic, let's just switch gears a little bit. Copilots. Copilots has been around for a bit now, but now with Gen AI coming in, there's a lot of adoption, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure you're seeing a lot of adoption. And in the context of utilities, it's not just desk side copilots, but there's also copilots, field copilots, right? There's a lot that we're doing, at least IBM Consulting is doing in that space in terms of enabling copilots. Using a lot of it is using Microsoft technology, a lot of it is Watson, a lot of it is other partners, but Microsoft quite heavily because if I look at the statistics, Microsoft practice is IBM Consulting's fastest growing practice, at least in Canada. So there's a lot that we're doing together. Where are you seeing some tangible examples of good use of copilots?
So Copilot is a marketing term within Microsoft to describe anything that we infuse with AI
Yeah,
effectively. Yeah, so we have a Copilot for M365, so basically a Copilot for the Office suite, Teams, Copilot for retrieval on individual laptops, for instance. But we also working with the IBMs on Maximo Copilot to be able to interact with your asset management software field. I mean, I'd love for you to talk a bit about what IBM is doing on the field Copilot side, because what I'm thinking about field Copilot is that going back to the failure is not an option conversation.
yeah,
Think about the cost of inaction in a rapidly changing world with all the issues around vegetation management, around like wildfire mitigations, around storm response. What do you do if you realize that your failure to implement copilots on for your workforce has led to delays and time to restorations that took a lot longer than your peers in the industry?
yeah. What I find fascinating, and there's two parts to this conversation, right? One is like people like planners and analysts and all of that. They're doing this desk chat job. For them to be able to access knowledge in terms of existing procedures, what was done in the past, what are some solutions that they need to look at, how can they perform certain analysis in a certain way, even accelerating the analysis part. That's where I see there's a lot of opportunities for Copilot or Gen AI based tools to significantly enhance their work life, right? The productivity of their work lives. Just by the sheer fact that you have, let's say, several regulatory defenses that you've done in the past. Instead of you having to read through all of it and looking it up, if that is a document collection that you can now interact with, ask questions to it, and get it to respond, that it's such a big productivity lever that people can use. I'm starting to see that planners and analysts are able to do that. Modeling new things, they're able to do that. The
But yeah,
other big, yeah, sorry.
if you think about the power of AI to speed
Yeah,
up permitting or interconnections, that's also like incredible. I'd love to hear as well, like, because again, we are more on the Microsoft has some consulting capabilities, but obviously we are more on the software side.
yeah.
I would love to hear from a cultural angle your experience in making those changes happen on the ground. It's one thing to have the tools; it's another thing to make sure that the teams on the ground doing the actual restoration with the right work orders
Correct.
using those tools, right?
Yeah, sure. So there is that's the field service part of it, and there is a significant context I need to understand where field service is sitting right now. Field service, traditionally, what do? When they go out on the field, they are climbing a pole. They have to look up the work order, make updates to it. If they have a doubt, they need to look up a technical manual. All of those things need to be performed in not so favorable conditions, right? It could be snowing, it could be raining, it could be hot, humid, it could be different kind of conditions. And the idea was in that condition, you have three or four or five different systems that you're interacting with at any point in time. And consistently, what you hear from field crew is nobody thinks about me when they're rolling out enterprise systems. My usability sucks. That's kind of what they say. The first part of anything like a copilot is you make, instead of application driven, you make it actions user specific, user driven. Like, I want to do this thing. It doesn't matter what platform that I need to use, but I have now a copilot, an AI agent, interpreting what I want to do and going and making those updates wherever it's needed. So you've all of a sudden given them a single panel of interaction. Now you add capabilities like voice into it, then you don't have to start taking off your gloves and pressing things and all that. You're interacting with in your natural language, in your natural tone. You're just talking to somebody like you're talking to your buddy in the other truck, right? And as a consequence of that, it's also the amount of data and the quality of data that they're able to capture for each work order, right? Before a copilot kind of scenario, if you need to type everything and they're going to type the minimal thing that's possible, they are not going to fill out all the fields. What happens because of that? The ultimate data quality related to that particular asset, but that particular work order is going to suffer. And that impacts your asset analytics, that impacts your prediction of failures and all of those things. But with an voice interface, now you can capture a lot more. So data quality significantly increases. The other thing is, if you have a doubt, you need to look up a technical manual, all of that. Again, the power is that it can look up wherever it needs to look up and get you the right answer, point you to the right place, right? It's such a phenomenal productivity tool from that perspective, accelerating some of that work, being able to do it safely. The third thing is also, you're looking at a workforce that's coming up close to retirement in many cases, right? There's new people coming in. A lot of the old, a lot of the long timers are going to retire. There is a significant problem with training new people up. The training burden drastically reduces when you have something as powerful as a tool like this, because now you can train without having to dedicate the senior folks. The basic training is about to be done. Even when they go out of the field, there is still a mature tool that's guiding you through the process. They might not day one go and start switching and all that. That's okay, right? They might be changing something more less trivial, but it's that the training enablement significantly increases with something like that. So that's what I'm observing. I'm very, very fascinated and very bullish on field crews starting to adopt it. I do see a lot of friction, a lot of challenges with respect to accelerating the adoption. But before I go there, like I want to hear the thoughts.
No, but I find it fascinating. One of the things I was thinking about is, again, going back to this idea of failure not being an option. Your example of field service
Yeah.
workers using Copilot or AI. Sometimes you get pushed back on like the quality of the answers, or the fact that because they have answers in a chatbot, people would be less inclined to go into the details, or
Yeah.
the answer could be wrong. What are we comparing? Yes, but what do we compare that with? Do we compare that with a perfect world where every single worker knows every regulation by heart, which actually doesn't exist?
Doesn't exist.
Or are we comparing with maybe there's an old booklet somewhere with all the information that nobody's looking at? Are we comparing best case scenario, I think, with a tablet or a shared computer with a control F function on a very, very big PDF?
Yeah.
And I think the Happy Chatbot is better than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, compared to what you have, is it improving your life or not? That's the most important question. Not
Exactly.
being scared about what are the everything. And it's important to look at what can go wrong. But it's not the biggest problem is it's not hallucinating and giving you something you're not expected to. That's the biggest problem, right? But the hallucination problem is lesser and lesser if you were to train it better with the right amount of there is a trusted source of documentation that you need to train it with, and that's what the documentation it has access to. It's not the public world. It's not not the bold new world and all of that, right? If you put those guardrails in place, those are easily workable, right? And as I said, you don't need them to be equipped to do this in high stress, let's say highly consequential situations. That's what I'm talking about, right? Nobody's asking you to go touch a live wire just because you're a Copilot, right? That's not the point, right? Uh, in increasing the safety, increasing the quality of workmanship, and increasing the productivity of some of the most trivial, more frequent tasks, it has a big impact. That's my angle.
Yeah, and the specific use case we're talking about is retrieval augmented generation, RAG, but you could go beyond that as well. And I'm thinking about what we do for cross industry for security with Security
Yeah,
Copilot, where one of the issues with security is there's always something going wrong somewhere. The question is, how important is it? And are two separate incident linked? So is a
yeah.
door badly closed somewhere, or is it one door that's badly closed and then the next door in the same corridor that's also being opened, and you know what this is leading to, right? And so AI can really help make sense of that in the cybersecurity
100%.
world. And AI can also help you then report on any incident, not only help you actually solve the incident, help you see the incident, help you resolve the incident, and then obviously help you do a postmortem on the incident. The same thing is starting to be applied on the ground in employee health and safety scenarios where
Yeah.
you have bag on the rules and regulations for site visits, but you also have the ability to see with security camera who's wearing the protective gear, for instance, and are they wearing it properly. We have vision AI applications now already in the ground where you can predict the risk of a specific truck going in a certain direction and potentially being in a line of fire, having employees in a line of fire. All this can be brought in together to avoid any human incidents.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. What are the impediments that you're seeing in terms of that adoption, though? Like I'm seeing a bunch of them. It's not mostly user driven. It's mostly organization structure driven, right? And that inertia in some of the organizations have. Classic example is, I'll give you an example from my experience. A lot of the times, unfortunately, IT stands in the way. Business is excited about a prospect of applying it. The field's users are excited. There's a new thing. I can see how it benefits me, helps me. But the moment it comes to it, oh, our systems are not engineered to set it up that way just yet. Or we don't have an overarching AI strategy for the organization just yet. So we have to hold on to it, right? That to me is a disservice because, you can write AI strategy and policies for a year and still accomplish nothing, right? And why are you doing that when you're not so special as an organization? Allow your vendors to help you to put your strategy together. And it's not rocket science, right? There is sensical strategies that has been evolved and developed. You just need to adopt what is a pattern that I want to go back with. And invest in setting up some nice innovation lab set up, right? These are the test environments that you can use. And with cloud, I thought we were supposed to get very easy access to additional environments that we need, additional test labs that we need, etc. But it's just that sometimes is hampering progress more than business drive and business understanding and their eagerness to do things. I find that very ironic, though.
I relate to everything you said. I completely respect IT's willingness to
No, I'm not. I'm not saying I'm not trashing. This is not a IT trash talk, but yeah,
there's a fine balance between kind of controlling the pace of innovation, making sure that not everybody within the organization creates their own
yes,
power app, but at the same time, like the business folks with the actual problems, helping themselves solve their own problems, that can be really, really powerful. So yeah, there's an alignment between IT and business. When we do innovation envisioning, we always insist on having IT and the business together. Otherwise, there's some cross-selling that needs to happen on both sides. But that's absolutely, I agree with you. And I would really go back to the fact that in innovation scenario, especially when we're talking about technologies that's so new, and that is so kind of in one way hyped, in the other way feared, like AI. Yeah, people just compare whatever you propose with not with what's happening on the ground. So what you propose replacing something by, but with some sort of ideal scenario. So you basically invent free food and people push back because maybe, it's not as good as a Michelin 3-star restaurant.
I like that. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right. It's just is the perception of value versus actual value.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say as well in AI, things are changing so quickly that the value from an accounting standpoint, the ROI, evolves in a very unusual way as well. Because whenever you call models, they're calling the models as a cost, right? But those costs are going down precipitously. So if you innovate slowly, and by the time you decide that something have reached your ROI threshold, you're potentially late already. Because by the time you implement it, cost will be way below, and so the ROI will be way beyond.
Yeah, and the rate of change is so high that you got to be really fast, like fast
Yeah,
and nimble. That's the only way to go about it, right? And be prepared to fail in certain cases too. Like now, like you look at the portfolio, and if you have all you see is like majority of it is failures, that's a bad thing, right? But you know, it's almost like the classic bell curve, right? There will be you launch pilots. There will be a lot of pilots which will not meet the threshold. You'll have to pack it up. You learn from it. You move on. That's okay. But the majority of pilots will give you good amount of value right in the middle of that sweet bell curve. That's a value. And there will be few which will sort of extremely valuable. It'll justify your investment within a few months, right? It's those two. So you've got to bank on that and call it saying that okay, I'm going to have 70% success. Maybe 30% is going to go fail, and that's okay. I'm learning something from it. I'm moving forward. Knowledge has value, right? You assign value to knowledge too.
you can get a lot of value from AI that's already embedded into
Yeah,
tools you already. So I think some aspect of AI can be seen as hyped potentially, but there's a lot of improvement in individual workflows. Not even talking about business process reengineering, but within like actual individual workflows in a company from using the Office suite Copilot.
yeah,
One thing that I feel is underhyped is the quality of output from Microsoft Researcher, which is one of the Copilot personalities in M365 Copilot. As well as a utility, you can think about implementing your own projects, but you can buy from suppliers. So in that spirit, I mentioned Itron before, but Microsoft worked with Itron to build a Copilot connection to the Itron Intelligent Edge operating system. So effectively with that connector, utilities can ask natural language questions.
to the meter.
Yeah, exactly. And surface insights.
Yeah,
The Itron Enterprise Edition MDM, meter data management, and also the operations optimizer. And so with those connections, you preserve existing access controls. You're still aligned with
yeah,
enterprise governance, and you can find information like consumption patterns, like outage history, in a natural with natural language.
yeah. And how transformational is that, right? You think of it, instead of you looking at a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet style format or whatnot, you can actually interact with it and interact with it at your level, right? An analyst asks a slightly different question, but an executive might be asking a slightly different question, right? But it's able to respond to all of that. How transformational, how impactful is that? That's baffling. And you're not just limited to just a meter, right? You can interact with that ecosystem that needs to give you that answer because the agent is doing that for you, right? It's consolidating and looking at different things and consolidating those responses to give you. Yeah, I'm very bullish on how that's going to change how you operate and how you work and all of that. So,
But
excellent example.
I'm going to do your bidding, Swaroop, because it's not magic. And I think even if you buy that capability,
Yeah.
it always helps to have some consulting guidance to make sure that you
Yeah.
still map new business processes to those new capabilities.
Yeah. It's not like going into a candy store and being there, right? It's got to be a streamlined process. Yeah, I'm 100%. That's where we bring in value. Thanks for the call out. Appreciate that. Now, we talked a lot about high consequential use cases like field use cases and all that. There are a lot more lower consequential use cases, right? For example, we are
Yes.
seeing a lot of success with things like regulatory approvals, right? Rate cases and all of that. I know Microsoft was doing something with respect to nuclear power plant approvals and whatnot. Do you want to quickly chat about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. We're doing some really good work with Nudesic, now part of IBM
Thank you.
Consulting.
Thanks for the call out again.
Yeah, on rate case. So basically, really simplifying the whole global rate case process for utilities. But I think even more consequential, definitely at a global scale. A few years ago, Microsoft signed an agreement with a company called TerraPraxis, not to be confused with TerraPower, which is Bill Gates'
Yeah.
nuclear company. So TerraPraxis is a non-for-profit that works to identify cold power sites, so former coal power station, because they are already, the site is already classified industrial, and there's all the connections to the grid already there because it's a power plant, right? It used to be a power plant in some cases. And the idea is to replace those old coal power stations that produce a lot of carbon with small modular reactors. And with that in mind, Microsoft worked on a generative AI solutions to streamline permitting application, which is now available not only for nuclear, but for any type of generation, from hydro to wind to solar. And as of a few days ago, we announced a connection between this LLM, this set of tools
Yeah.
based on large language models, and the Microsoft planetary computer, which really allows the automated pooling of specific site data with GPS into the creation of applications. So very roughly, to take 2 seconds to talk about how this works, the tool allows you to go from the old process, which would be to gather all the required information, all the site data, like I said, then spend months working from a white page to build together like a draft
Yeah.
permit document, work with lawyers and consultants, submit it to the regulator, and then get pushback from the regulator because there's a few things missing or something that was not impressed clearly. Now the process is basically, you still have to connect all the right information, obviously. So you find all the right information, your generation design, your site data, all that, the relevant regulation, obviously. But then in 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, you get a 500-page document that, to you and me, to untrained eyes, looks completely submittable. It's not. It's a draft, but it looks extremely clean. Like it all the
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. It looks absolutely impeccable. Then you do the back and forth with consultants and lawyers on the document, but not from a white page. So this is much shorter. And then prior to submission, another layer of GenAI acts as an editor and really allows you to kind of check your work for consistency, compares whatever you worked on with a previous question that were received from the regulator, all the submissions in the past, and will really allow you to catch most, if not all, of potential submission issues, basically. And so you avoid having the 6 months back and forth every time there's a rejection. And in some cases, we estimate the saving at around 80%. And if you think about what it costs to permit a nuclear plant, it's enormous.
Awesome. That's a terrific use case. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. All right, let's look at, a lot of companies are going with pilots right now.
Yeah.
They're doing pilots, but I feel that a lot of them are struggling to scale. What do you agree with that assessment?
No, I do.
What
It's yeah, sure. Yeah.
what do you think is really holding them back in terms of
So we talked.
scaling it?
Yeah. We talked about a few of these before, but I feel that there's some comfort in pilots remaining at pilot stages, because you feel that you're innovating without actually changing. Because what do we mean by pilot? At the end of the day, you do something outside of the regular business. That's what it is. If a pilot is within your business process and it's no longer a pilot, it's something actually people are using rather than just testing.
Yeah.
And I think there's comfort in keeping pilots at bay, and keeping real innovation at bay. Again, I would go back to our conversation around the risks and risk of failure. I think there's a failure of inaction, which is enormous if you pilots in a pilot stage. If you test that permitting idea on the side with a very marginal little project somewhere, and then you see there's value and you implement it, fine. But if you just stay at the testing phase just to play with it, then you won't get any of the value. And that's true as well for enabling your workforce on the ground to do more and more quickly. Again, in case of fire or storms, and that has real impact. Risk aversion actually creates risk in this case.
I think we've pretty much coming to the end of our conversation here. We have about 50 minutes that we have spoken now, but to sort of neatly wrap it up, if there is one AI capability that you would like accelerated really fast to be able to support grid reliability, system resilience, etc., what would that be, if any? I know it's a
I
tough
mean,
question.
yeah, it's tough to choose because we have so many
It's so
partners.
many, yeah. Maybe couple of them.
I can take, I can take two examples quickly. So one is line vision, where basically optimize the power flow in a given transmission line. And again, this is almost a non-brainer, right? You have, I mean, it's the ideal non-wire solution, because you actually make the most of what your existing wires.
Yeah,
Basically, you just calculate how much power can flow through, and rather than building a second line, you optimize the existing ones. There is great work being done as well around modeling modeling the grid for distribution. Partners like Think Labs really allows utilities to make the most of what they have, and think about where to invest, and what to optimize. I think at the end of the day, this is not about having like one single solution that trumps
true.
the other. Or that's
Yeah,
it depends on where a specific utility is struggling, where it has like stronger teams that will be ready for innovation, where the culture is ready to embrace change. Because I mean, as with everything, there's a big change management aspect to this. Early in my career, I have seen an accountant. We're talking about the 2020s, right? So not the 1700s, but
yeah,
I've seen somebody in the early 2000s add manually using Excel. So 2 + 2 = 4, calculated, some obviously something more complicated, but calculated with a calculator and then input it into Excel. So yeah, there's a change management, there's training for all these things that needs to happen.
makes sense. Any advice for executives, as a last bit of advice, if for you to provide?
Well, beyond doing more with existing assets, which would be, I think, thinking about non-wires and alternatives, and permitting when something needs to be permitted. We've covered that, but I think that's really like the sequence. Do I need to do anything, or can I optimize what I already have? And if I need new things, how to optimize the permitting and the building of those new things.
Yeah,
Beyond that, I would say, almost from a kind of cultural standpoint, creating a kind of control tower team that will be tied to operations, not to innovation, and give team a mandate, a very concrete set of KPIs around congestion, outage, interconnection timelines, and use existing data. And I think if you do that, and a year later, or a few months later, you haven't seen any movements in those key reliability metrics, then you're basically experimenting with POCs rather than actually moving the needle. So yeah, that's what I would do.
all right. Has been a great conversation, Laurent. I know it doesn't feel like it, but it's almost an hour that we've been chatting away.
So it's great to talk to
Yeah,
you.
it doesn't feel like the time moves really fast when you're having some intense conversations, of topics of interest. Anyways, thanks for making the time. I know we took a while to set this up, but this has been a great conversation, and hopefully we can connect in the next little while.